WDET. I'm Tia Graham. Films are no stranger to Michigan. The state started a program that offered tax credits and cash rebates to encourage movie makers to produce their films here. And for a brief period in time, Michigan was a desirable place to shoot movies. I remember personally making it a point to go downtown to see Transformers being filmed. It was magical to see. And since the program was canceled about a decade ago, productions have largely gone elsewhere to shoot, like Atlanta. But the industry has had a history of setting some of its popular stories here in Detroit. So, which movies really capture the city, its essence, and the people who live here? A wide range of film and television shows, from horror to comedy and everything in between, have taken a swing at it. Today, we're going to discuss and critique movies that were made in or about Metro Detroit. Stephen Shaviro is a former film critic and professor at Wayne State University. He joins me now to discuss this. Stephen, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, before we get into films about or shot in Detroit, I want to understand what you look for personally in films. Stephen, when you watch a piece of media, what are you looking for?
Well, I mean, like most people, though maybe I have peculiar tastes. Like most people, I'm looking for excitement and vision. I mean, vision we say, but it really includes sound, because movies, it's often neglected, but movies really work with sound a lot as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just things which are, dramatically intense and which say something about the world, and that has to do with place also, obviously.
Yeah. And we're going to get into this movie, the first one, It Follows. So let's start. This particular film, of course, has been very popular. A lot of people enjoyed this film. It's a psychological thriller from 2014. It's directed by David Robert Mitchell. A college student is followed by a supernatural being after she has had sex with her boyfriend. So just break this film down a little bit for us.
Okay, it's a very unique kind of horror film. I mean, a lot of people, myself included, love horror films, the kind of thrills of the scares, but usually it's the same ideas being recycled over and over again. I mean, you can see lots of, vampire films, lots of living dead zombie films, but It Follows had a kind of unique idea to it. So the idea was that whatever this monstrous force was, would follow somebody, and the way they could escape it is by having sex with somebody else. Then it would start following the person they had sex with, but then if it got that person, it would trace back the sexual liaison. So it's a very unusual idea for a horror film. There's been nothing that I know of that's really made like that. But it was also a film set in the Detroit area, and that is, I mean, it's a film which is almost entirely set in the suburbs, though they come into the city for the climax, and it's mostly these white young people, and there's a lot of talk in the film, and this is something which other films don't mention, but which is very much front and center here, that they're afraid to go to Detroit. They live in the suburbs where people are well-to-do and where everything's peaceful, and the city is a place of danger where there are prostitutes and drugs and all kinds of horrible things. And it's sort of like it's a movie with almost entirely white characters, but it's acknowledging the racial dynamics of this region in ways that many other works just don't talk about.
Yeah, the cross 8 Mile theory.
Yeah.
So early in the film, the protagonist, Jay, he does discover her boyfriend, was lying about who he had slept with, and this entity wouldn't stop following him. So here's a quick snippet of that so our listeners can hear.
Look, even though it's following you, I can still see it. It's not done with me either, okay? And like I told you, all you can do is pass it along to someone else. Look, she could do the same thing I did. I mean, it should be easy for her. She's a girl. Any guy would be with you. Just sleep with someone else and tell him to do the same thing. Maybe it'll never come back. Look, I'm not safe either, okay? We shouldn't even be in the same place. I'm sorry, you guys need to get the fuck out. Hey, watch it. If it kills her, it gets me. It goes straight down the line to whoever started it. Jay, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to hurt you, okay? Someone did this to me too, okay?
So listening to that once
Yeah.
again and breaking it down just a little bit there, I mean, that sounded very eerie. Very, very
Well,
eerie.
it's very eerie. It deals with paranoia about sex.
Yeah.
I mean, are you really having sex with somebody because you love them, or is it some instrumental reason? And here it almost becomes this thing. You have sex with somebody so you can pass it off to them, but if they get in trouble, then it comes back to you. So it's a very tangled kind of thing. And but the film very much plays with, again, the difference between Oakland County and
Detroit.
Metro Detroit and
Yeah.
Detroit itself, because, Metro Detroit is where they're afraid to go. And so here, where they think they're safe is where this monster's coming and stalking them. And when they eventually, you never know you're not sure at the end whether it's actually been killed or not, but they come into Detroit at the end in order to try to trap it. So it's the mythology of white flight and of the racial politics of Detroit is sort of on the edges of this film, even though it's mostly about sort of paranoia and fear and ambivalence around having sex.
Yeah, and so for yourself, on a scale of like 1 to 5, how would you rate it in its representation of Detroit and Metro Detroit?
Well, I'd probably give it a 3. I mean, it's not, as it says, it's more about the suburban fear of the city than about the city itself. But I mean, it's really honest and straightforward in pointing out that is in the back of a lot of people's minds, especially a lot of white people's minds, and has a lot to do with the urban dynamics of the difference between the city and Oakland County.
Now let's get into a cult classic, RoboCop. RoboCop is such a cult classic. It's a 1987 sci-fi film, and it's shot, of course, in Detroit. It's about a cyborg police officer in the city of Detroit, and here in the city of Detroit, Metro Detroit, it's very, very popular. We have that RoboCop statue just put up in Eastern Market. But here is a snippet of RoboCop.
Let the woman go. You are under arrest.
You better back up, pal! Because he's gonna kill her! He's gonna kill her!
Your move, creep.
Now, this film, of course, has multiple sequels, TV shows, video games, and more. And we've discussed the fandom around the film. But what's notable about this film and how it relates to the city?
Well, it's the date is in the 1980s, 1987. So it really is a film which is I don't think it was made here. I don't remember where it was shot, but it's latching into the mythology in the later 20th century about Detroit. So, I mean, we have actually a rich history here, but again, it was always a working class city because of the auto industry, but that led to a lot of racial tension because, like the rest of America, there was a lot of racism and divisions between white and black people. And this 1967 rebellion or riots, depending on who you're talking to, was a lot about the kind of racial status quo. And so Detroit had this kind of, maybe still does, but certainly in 1987 had this mythic status as the city gone wrong, the former industrial powerhouse, which became hellish and crime-ridden and drug-ridden and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of that was tied up with kind of racism. And, white, I don't know I'm not a good enough historian to know all the details, but white flight intensified after 1967.
Yeah.
And the city was really transformed. And city services broke down, and the national and state governments didn't want to really help a city which is mostly for black people. So there's a kind of thing in which it's a misrepresentation, but it's one which itself played a big part in national politics and in the, what happened from the triumphs to the defeats of the civil rights movement and to the backlash of Reagan and, now... and worse now, but anyway, so
and Stephen, just hearing you say that and thinking about a RoboCop and watching it, especially growing up and seeing it, it almost felt like Detroit was Gotham City, and it was almost just this place that only crime happened and no light was here. It
was totally mythologized, and the movie played in very successfully that mythology. I should say also that Paul Weller, the actor who played RoboCop, this is about May 1050. He came back to Paul Weller quit acting and became an art historian in academia, and he gave a great lecture, I think at the State Theater here in Detroit, like maybe a decade ago, where he just talked about I mean, he mostly talked about art, but he talked about it in the very awareness that here's this place which he was involved in getting mythologized in this very weird way.
Yes.
Well, Paul Weller is an interesting guy.
You're listening to The Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Tia Graham. We're discussing movies that were made in Detroit or based in Detroit with Wayne State professor Steven Shaviro. Now, a popular film, of course, this one was released in 2002, is 8 Mile. And this film needs very little introduction. It was directed by Curtis Hanson and written by Scott Silver. It's a coming-to-age story for rapper Eminem. And this movie has been and still is a major pop culture reference for the city of Detroit. I don't care who you are or where you go. 8 Mile's referenced in some way, shape, or form. Mom Spaghetti is referenced in some way, shape, or form. So what are your thoughts on this representation of the region?
Well, again, I think it's a powerful representation of Eminem's career, even though it's a fictionalized version of his story. But Eminem, I mean, he originally became famous as a really kind of shock announcer, MC, and, being really vulgar and violent and ugly and stuff like that. But he's really obviously a really smart guy. Mm-hmm. And I think what he's very concerned with, and you can see this in the movie, which obviously was under his direction, even though he didn't either write or direct it, but starred as himself, is that he is very aware of the racial politics of music. So hip-hop has been predominantly a black art form for 50 years. And Eminem is a white guy who's entered into this. So he basically is trying to justify his role and, and have people understand how he relates to the art form as a whole. And so, I mean, it's kind of like, he has problems. Will people accept him as authentic because he's white? And therefore, the film's symbolically called 8 Mile, and that's, again, central referencing the difference between the city and Oakland County suburbs, which many parts of are more affluent. And, he's a white guy who's trying to show not only that he's not racist, but that he understands his place within this kind of art form, which has been largely African American. And he also does that in terms of class as well as race. When at the beginning of the movie, he loses to the black rapper in a rap battle. At the end of the movie, he wins the rap battle against the same guy. And his biggest put down of the African American rapper is that he went to Cranbrook.
And that's the clip I wanted to play. That's the most popular thing I think we all can reference is, Clarence's parents have a really good marriage. Here's the clip.
But I know something about you. You went to Cranbrook. That's a private school. What's the matter, dog? You in Paris? This guy's a gangster. His real name is Clarence. And Clarence lives at home with both parents. And Clarence's parents have a real good marriage. This guy don't want to battle. He's shook. There ain't no such thing as halfway crooks.
To this day, I can rap that entire scene because it's just one of the best scenes. But just like you were saying, he's trying to really solidify his space in black in rap right now in this film in that moment. But he teases, of course, the private school. He teases all these other things. Yeah. When I hear that, though, and it's listening to you talk just now, Stephen, I just think about how he was using those racial undertones to kind of sell his point and sell his relation to rap music. Yeah. How would you rate this film?
I'd give it a 4. Yeah. As I think it really says, he really gets to some truths about the dynamics both of the city and of hip-hop as an art form. And again, nobody wants to say that you can't be a rapper if you don't have the right ethnicity or race, but you have to recognize, part of what's great and brilliant about Eminem, I've always thought, ever since he first came up, more than 20 years ago, was just that he really understands the dynamic and understands that he has to acknowledge it to get his own place in it.
Yes, indeed. And there are some, films that we can go into more deeply. One of the most recent films that I saw that I really enjoyed was Barbarian, which was set in Detroit. It was in Brightmoor, but that was just a film that I thought, here's another film showcasing a part of the city of Detroit that, they want to show as if it was Gotham once again. But I do want to get to Blue Collar before we get out of here, because Blue Collar is a film that was made in 1978. We do have a clip from it, and it was categorized as a crime drama. It was directed by Paul Schrader and stars Richard Pryor, of course. Here's a clip of the character Smokey explaining the realities Pryor's character Zeke, and their friend Jerry are all facing at that moment.
And that's exactly what the company wants. To keep you on the line. They'll do anything to keep you on their line. They pit the lifers against the new boys, the old against the young, the black against the white, everybody to keep us in our place. I mean, can't you understand that?
And why does this film encapsulate Detroit for you?
Well, I mean, again, it's an old film from 1978. Yeah. It's the first film by Paul Schrader, who's gone on to a long and successful career as a director. And I think Paul Schrader himself came originally from Grand Rapids. But it's about both race and class and economics. And I mean, it's said the main characters are auto workers. They're two black guys and one white guy. So it's Yaphet Kotto, Richard Pryor, and Harvey Keitel. And they're friends, and they work on the same production line. They're considering about it, that they never have enough money. They're sort of mad at their union because they feel the union is not really representative and is just kowtowed to the management. They decide to rob the union's headquarters to get money, and they find there isn't anybody there, but they do find additional proof of what the union's doing, that it's colluding with the management against the workers it's supposed to represent. And so it's kind of a caper film, but there's not really anything they could do. The money isn't there. They don't know what else to do, but they're in danger because of what they found out. And so it's a very grim movie. Among the three of them, what happens is that the Yaphet Kotto character gets murdered on the assembly line. I mean, it's a setup, and it's obviously that being done from the top down, but he's murdered in an industrial process gone wrong. And then Richard Pryor and Harvey Keitel, the two ones who are left, get set against each other basically on racial lines. A Richard Pryor, in fact, character is bought off and given a position in the union which gives him more power and authority and more money. And so he and Harvey Keitel are no longer have any, solidarity. At the end of the movie, Harvey Keitel's yelling racist slurs at Richard Pryor. Yeah. And it's showing that kind of racism and things like that are deliberately being stoked by the power structure in order to keep people in their place. It's an astonishing film because there are very few Hollywood films which take that kind of working class approach as opposed to assuming it's sort of like there are not many films about poverty except for ones about drugs and murder, and usually everybody lives in Grosse Pointe and is well off, Yeah. So to see the struggle within folks who are working a 9-to-5 or working every single day in a factory, and especially in 1978, I mean, this is something that was well ahead of its time. Well, it's chilling because it shows how race and things like that are used to set the workers against one another. Yeah. Like the clip Richard Pryor says that in the clip you played, but then we see it work out in the plot of the film. And once again, with the film Blue Collar itself, if you could, rate it 1 to 5. I give it a 5. I think it's a really brilliant movie, and it tells us a lot of truths about Detroit and about America, which unfortunately are still valid all these decades later. Steven Shaviro is a former film critic and professor at Wayne State University. He joined me to discuss films and Detroit's representation within them. Thank you so much, Steven, for joining us on the Metro. My pleasure. Coming up, the City of Detroit's new program aimed at supporting filmmakers in the city. Stay right there. We'll be right back. This is the Metro.